Mara's presence had always been fleeting, a ghost hovering on the edge of Evelyn's vision, offering cryptic warnings and elusive guidance. But now, as they stood together in the heart of the carnival, the oppressive darkness pressing in around them, Mara's pale form radiated a strange, urgent light, one born of desperation and hope intertwined. "This ends tonight," Mara whispered, her voice barely more than a breath, yet carrying a weight that settled deep in Evelyn's chest. "The ringmaster's power is tethered to this place, to the souls trapped here. I can break some of those chains, but it will cost me everything." Evelyn's heart clenched. "You don't have to do this alone. We can fight him together." Mara's eyes flickered like candle flames caught in a sudden breeze. "I'm already part of this place, Evelyn. I'm bound here by my own failures. But your fight is different. Yours can end the cycle. I just need to buy you time." The carnival seemed to pulse with malevolent anticipation as the ringmaster's shadow loomed closer, his cracked porcelain mask gleaming under the faint, unnatural light. His voice slithered through the air, silky and sinister. "Ah, Mara, still playing the hero. You forget your place, lost soul." Mara stood firm, her translucent fingers weaving strange patterns in the air, drawing upon a power that shimmered with ethereal brilliance. "I remember all too well," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her form. "But this ends now." With a desperate cry, Mara unleashed a torrent of light that surged toward the ringmaster. The dark tendrils binding the carnival's soul recoiled and cracked under the assault. The twisted landscape quaked violently, the oppressive shadows retreating momentarily as if wounded. Evelyn reached out, her hand brushing Mara's glowing arm, feeling a warmth that was almost human. "Mara!" The spectral figure smiled sadly. "Go, Evelyn. Finish this. I'll hold him as long as I can." As Mara's form began to waver, dissolving like mist in the morning sun, Evelyn swallowed the lump of grief threatening to choke her. "Thank you," she whispered. Mara's eyes flickered one last time, filled with a fierce kindness. "For the first time, I am free." The carnival's pulse faltered, the darkness receding like a tide. But the battle was far from over. Evelyn stood alone now, the weight of Mara's sacrifice pressing heavily on her shoulders. Yet within that weight was a spark, a fragile, burning ember of hope. She clenched her fists, her sharp eyes blazing with renewed determination. "I will not let this end in vain." The carnival's twisted, decaying grandeur loomed around her, but the air felt different, charged with possibility, trembling on the edge of collapse. The legacy of fear was still there, a shadow over everything, but so too was the chance to break free. Evelyn stepped forward, her footsteps steady despite the storm of emotions swirling within. The fight was only beginning, but with Mara's redemption behind her, she was ready to face the darkness head-on. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, the ringmaster's sinister smile faltered. The nightmare was far from over, but so was the hope. The tent was suffocating, a cavern of shadows and flickering light that felt alive with breathless anticipation. The air was thick with the scent of dust, rust, and something faintly metallic like blood, but old, dried, and forgotten. Evelyn stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest like a war drum, the sound echoing in her ears louder than the carnival's distant creaks and groans. She was no longer just a visitor here. She was a participant in a dark ritual she had inherited, a legacy she was desperate to end. Before her stood the ringmaster, a towering figure cloaked in darkness, his cracked porcelain mask reflecting the dim light. His top hat sat at a crooked angle, and beneath it, the faintest hint of a sinister smile lingered on his lips. Yet tonight, that smile seemed brittle, as if the weight of centuries pressed down on the thin veneer of his malevolence. Evelyn's eyes locked onto the mask, its fractured surface marred by years of neglect and torment. The cracks spidered outward like veins, as if the mask itself was alive, struggling to contain whatever lay beneath. She took a breath, steadying herself against the tide of fear that threatened to wash her away. "It's not too late," she said, voice trembling but resolute. "You don't have to be this monster." The The ringmaster tilted his head, the mask's hollow eyes boring into hers. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he reached up and began to peel the mask away. The porcelain cracked further with each inch removed, shards falling to the ground with a sharp, tinkling sound that echoed like distant bells. Beneath the mask was not the cruel demon Evelyn had imagined, but something far more tragic. The face was gaunt, the skin pale and stretched tight over sharp bones. His eyes, once hidden, were hollow wells of pain, flickering with memories and regrets long buried. There was a humanity there, raw and broken, that made Evelyn's breath catch. "I was once like you," the ringmaster whispered, voice ragged and distant. "A man with dreams, with love, with hope. But the carnival, it took everything. It promised me eternity, and I took the bargain, not knowing the price." Tommy, standing nearby, clenched his fists, stepping protectively in front of Evelyn. "You're not a monster. You're a prisoner," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his eyes. "And maybe it's time someone set you free." From the shadows, Mara's pale form flickered, her candlelit eyes glowing softly. She was a ghost of the liminal space between life and death, a reminder of what it meant to be caught in the carnival's web. Her presence was a balm to Evelyn's frayed nerves, a flicker of hope in the consuming darkness. "He's been trapped too long," Mara murmured. "The curse binds us all, but understanding is the first step to breaking the chain." The carnival around them seemed to pulse, the walls breathing with the whispers of past victims. Shadows shifted, twisting into faces Evelyn recognized her grandmother's, among them silent witnesses to the unfolding revelation. The mask's fall was more than a physical act. It was a tearing away of centuries of lies and pain. Evelyn reached out, her fingers trembling as she touched the ringmaster's cheek. The skin was cold, but beneath the surface, she sensed a flicker of warmth, a spark of the man he once was. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized the true horror was not the external mask, but the internal prison. "Why did you do it?" she asked softly. "Why make this pact?" A bitter smile ghosted his lips. Desperation, fear of death, the desire to hold on to joy, to keep the carnival alive. But joy without freedom is a curse, and now I am bound to this place, a shadow of the man I used to be. The carnival's oppressive grip seemed to loosen slightly, the shadows retreating as if repelled by the truth. Yet the victory was bittersweet. Evelyn felt the weight of the legacy deeper than ever. This was not just a battle against a malevolent spirit, but a confrontation with the sorrow and sacrifice at the heart of the curse. Tommy's voice broke through the silence. "We have to keep fighting, for all of us, for her." Evelyn nodded, steeling herself. The ringmaster's fall was a beginning, not an end. The mask was shattered, but the carnival's hold was far from broken. As the tense lights flickered and the shadows danced once more, she knew the final act was yet to come. "We'll end this," she vowed, voice low but fierce. No more masks, no more curses. But as the carnival pulsed around them, alive and hungry, the truth lingered. Freedom would demand a price, and not all scars would ever fade. The night stretched ahead, dark and endless, as Evelyn stepped forward into the heart of the storm, where joy and terror entwined in a deadly dance. The ringmaster's fall was but a crack in the carnival's facade, and the nightmare was far from over. And somewhere, deep within the shadows, the legacy waited, patient and unyielding, ready to claim its due once more. The ground beneath my feet began to shudder with a deep, primal rumble as the carnival around us convulsed and twisted like a dying beast. The once bright tents, their paint peeling and faded, now seemed to rot and warp into grotesque shadows that clawed desperately at the thickening mist. I grabbed Tommy's arm, dragging him forward through the chaos that had become our prison.
"This way!"
I shouted over the cacophony of cracking wood and tearing canvas. Tommy's breath came in ragged gasps, his eyes wide with disbelief as the carnival's attractions warped and groaned around us. The carousel's chipped horses twisted their necks unnaturally, their painted eyes bleeding streams of black ichor. The Ferris wheel, a rusting skeleton, groaned and creaked as it spun in reverse, each rotation shedding shards of glass and metal like falling stars. Behind us, the ringmaster's laughter echoed through the air, a sound so chilling it pierced straight through my bones. His voice was a twisted symphony of amusement and menace, taunting us as the carnival seemed to rise up in protest of our escape. Spectral figures emerged from the dissolving tents, carnival workers with hollow eyes and mournful expressions. Their translucent hands reached out, grasping at the air, begging for release yet threatening to drag us back. Their presence was a cruel reminder of the souls trapped here, condemned to the endless cycle of torment. "We have to keep moving," I urged Tommy, pushing past the paralysis that threatened to freeze me in place. We were almost there. Suddenly, a shimmering veil shimmered ahead, a flickering portal between collapsing realities. Mara appeared, her pale form wavering like a candle in the wind. Her eyes flickered with a mixture of hope and sorrow, a bittersweet farewell etched into every gesture. "This is your way out," she whispered, her voice like the rustling of dry leaves. "But remember, the curse follows those who flee unbroken." I took her offered hand without hesitation, feeling the cold pulse of her ethereal presence guide me through the veil. The world twisted and blurred, colors bleeding into one another, sounds distorting into distorted echoes. When we emerged, the carnival's silhouette was a ghostly memory, dissolving into the thick mist that clung to the earth like a shroud. Outside the carnival's boundary, I collapsed to my knees, gasping for breath as the oppressive weight of the place lifted at least physically. Tommy crouched beside me, wiping sweat from his brow, his skeptical gaze softened by relief. But the silence that surrounded us was not peaceful. It was heavy with unresolved terror, a quiet that screamed of unfinished business. The carnival was gone, but the legacy it had chained to my soul remained, an invisible leash pulling at the edges of my consciousness. I looked at Tommy, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's not over." He nodded, understanding the burden I now carried, a burden passed down through generations, a legacy of fear and cursed joy interwoven into the very fabric of my being. We had escaped the carnival's physical abyss, but its shadow stretched far beyond the mist, and I knew with chilling certainty that the nightmare was far from finished. As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky with pale hues, I rose unsteadily to my feet, determined to face whatever darkness awaited. The carnival that never closed had faded, but its legacy was etched into me forever. And somewhere, deep within the swirling mists of my mind, the echo of the ringmaster's laughter lingered, promising that the cycle might one day begin anew. The city's morning light filtered weakly through the threadbare curtains of my apartment, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. I stood at the window, my fingers tracing the cold glass as I stared out at the bustling streets below. A world that continued obliviously despite the nightmare I'd barely escaped. The distant hum of traffic and the occasional sharp cry of a street vendor felt like a cruel reminder of normalcy, something I once took for granted but now seemed utterly alien. I blinked, trying to shake the heaviness that settled in my chest. Relief and dread warred within me, a suffocating blend that made every breath feel like dragging stones uphill. The carnival had faded into mist behind me, but its presence clung like a shadow I couldn't outrun. The grotesque laughter, the flickering lights, the ringmaster's cracked porcelain mask, they haunted every corner of my mind, slipping into the quiet moments when I thought myself safe. A sudden knock at the door jolted me. I hesitated, heart thumping erratically, before opening it to find Tommy standing there, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. His rugged frame filled the doorway, his wary gaze softening as he caught sight of me. Though his usual brash demeanor was tempered by exhaustion, there was an unspoken bond between us forged in the fires of shared terror. "Thought you might need this," he said quietly, stepping inside. The apartment was cramped and cluttered, a reflection of my frayed state. He set the cups down on the table, his eyes never leaving mine as he searched for the right words. "How are you holding up?" he asked, voice rough but gentle. I swallowed hard, the weight of the question pressing down on me. I don't know, I admitted. I'm here, but it's like the carnival never really left. Tommy nodded, understanding etched deeply on his face. We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the soft clink of ceramic mugs. Then, a sudden creak from the floorboards made me flinch violently, my eyes darting toward the shadowed corner of the room. Tommy's hand shot out, steadying me. It's just the building settling, he reassured, though I could tell he was as unsettled as I was. Later that evening, unable to quell the restless turmoil within, I pulled out my grandmother's old journal, a fragile relic filled with fading ink and cryptic entries. The pages whispered secrets of past horrors, each word a chilling echo of the legacy I now bore. As I traced the lines, shadows danced unnaturally around the dim room, as if the very air vibrated with unseen menace. I shivered, clutching the book to my chest. The more I learned, the heavier the curse seemed to weigh, a noose tightening with every revelation. I felt as though I was sinking into a quicksand of despair and dread, struggling to find solid ground. At one point, drawn to the mirror hanging crookedly on the wall, I caught my reflection, or rather, a flicker of something else. For a heartbeat, my face shifted into the ringmaster's cracked porcelain mask, his sinister smile frozen in time. The image vanished as quickly as it came, but the chill it left behind was visceral. I staggered back, heart pounding in my ears. The carnival's grip was not just a memory or a nightmare. It was a living, breathing presence within me. I was not free. Tommy's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts. "We'll figure this out," he said firmly. "Together. You're not alone in this." His words were a balm, but the question gnawed at me relentlessly. Could I truly escape the legacy that had claimed my grandmother and threatened to consume me? Or was I doomed to be another soul trapped in the carnival's eternal night? The shadows lengthened as the city lights flickered to life outside, and I knew that whatever awaited, the nightmare was far from over. My fight was just beginning. And somewhere, deep in the recesses of my mind, the carnival whispered, promising that the joy would return, and with it, the terror that never truly fades. I closed my eyes, steeling myself against the darkness. The carnival might have faded for now, but its legacy was woven into my very being. And I would have to face it again and again until the cycle was broken, if that was even possible. The night stretched on, the silence broken only by the distant echo of a carnival tune, haunting and bittersweet. A reminder that some places, some curses, never truly close. The burden of legacy the fire had burned low, casting flickering shadows that danced across the cabin walls. Evelyn sat curled on the floor, the weight of the worn photograph pressing coldly against her palm. It was Edith's face staring back at her grandmother's eyes, sharp and haunted, staring out from decades past. The silence around her was thick, save for the occasional pop from the embers. She traced the contours of Edith's face with trembling fingers, as if trying to draw strength from the ghostly image. For years, Evelyn had been running from the stories, from the carnival, from the relentless shadow cast by her family's history. But now, sitting here in the quiet aftermath of the nightmare, she understood something new. The carnival's curse wasn't just a place she could leave behind. It was a legacy woven into her blood, a burden carried in her very soul. Her mind wandered back to the last days inside the carnival, the illusions that had threatened to consume her, the ringmaster's cruel smile etching itself into her memory. But those horrors were only part of the story. The true terror lay in the unbroken cycle, the inescapable inheritance of fear and suffering that had claimed her grandmother, and now threatened to claim her. A sudden knock at the door broke her reverie. Tommy stepped inside, his rugged frame outlined against the pale moonlight filtering through the window. His eyes were tired but steady, the familiar defensive posture she had known since childhood now tempered by something softer understanding. "You okay?" he asked quietly, as though afraid the walls might hear. Evelyn nodded, though the knot in her chest tightened. I'm trying to be. Tommy sat beside her, his presence a grounding force amid the swirling storm inside her. You've been carrying this alone for too long, he said. But you don't have to. She allowed herself a small, grateful smile. It's not just about what happened, it's about what's still coming, the curse. It's not something you run from, it's something you live with. He frowned, searching her face. How do you mean? She swallowed hard, voice low and steady. It's the burden of legacy. The carnival may fade, but the fear, the pain, the memories, they don't just vanish. They live on inside us, shaping who we are, threatening to pull us back, to break free. I have to face that every day. Not just the carnival, but myself. Tommy's gaze softened. Then we face it together. Later that evening, as the mist crept closer around the cabin, Mara appeared in a shimmer of candlelight. Her translucent form flickered, eyes glowing with an otherworldly fire. The curse is not a chain, Mara whispered, voice echoing like a distant bell. It is a legacy of shadows. To break it, you must walk through the darkness within and beyond. Evelyn met her gaze, the ethereal presence both unsettling and comforting. Why me? Why my family? Mara's smile was sad, because you carry the light to challenge the darkness. But be warned, the struggle never truly ends. As Mara faded, Evelyn felt a renewed sense of purpose mingled with the cold reality of her task. The carnival was gone, but its echoes remained, woven into the fabric of her being. The next morning, Evelyn and Tommy ventured to the edges of the carnival's remnants. The swirling mist cloaked the decaying tents and broken rides in a ghostly veil. A cold wind tugged at Evelyn's coat, whispering promises and threats all at once. She stood silent, eyes fixed on the horizon where joy and terror had danced their endless waltz. The carnival that never closed had left its mark not just on the land but on her soul. "We're not done," she murmured, "and maybe we never will be. But I'm ready." Tommy nodded, the faintest smile breaking through his weariness. "Then let's make sure this legacy ends with us." Together, they turned away from the mist, stepping into an uncertain dawn, carrying the weight of the past and the fragile hope of a different future. The burden of legacy was heavy, but so was the strength to bear it. The weight of silence pressed in on me, like the heavy fog that once shrouded the carnival grounds. Back in my apartment, far from the twisted tents and warped rides, I should have felt relief, a reprieve from the nightmare that had consumed my life. Yet the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to thicken, pulsing with a life of their own. I sat motionless, heart pounding, as a faint whisper brushed past my ear, a breath of sound so soft I questioned if it was real or merely the echo of my frayed mind. I told myself it was over. The carnival had dissolved into mist, the ringmaster defeated, or so I hoped with every fiber of my being. But that night the air grew cold, and the candle on my windowsill flickered erratically, as if responding to an unseen force. The dance of flame reminded me of Mara's flickering eyes, those pale, translucent orbs that had guided me through the carnival's illusions. I reached out instinctively, trying to hold onto the fading warmth, but the cold seeped deeper, settling in my bones like a creeping frost. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. The voices that once haunted the carnival's night laughter twisted into screams. Music warped into dissonance, now whispered just beyond hearing, teasing at the edges of my sanity. And then, the unmistakable call, the distant echo of a carnival barker's voice, low and sinister, threading through the wind outside my window. I jolted upright, heart hammering, and glanced toward the darkened street. Nothing but the empty night stared back. Tommy's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts, sharp and urgent. "Evelyn, are you okay? You've been distant lately. That place, it's not done with you, is it?" His skepticism was a shield, but I saw the worry shadowing his eyes. He wanted to believe I was safe, but the carnival's grasp was deeper than either of us had realized. I forced a smile, though it felt brittle and forced. "I'm fine, just adjusting." But I wasn't fine. I felt it, a dark tendril curling inside me, a silent shadow that pulsed in time with my heartbeat. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it gnawed at the edges of my mind. The curse wasn't gone. It had simply slipped beneath the surface, weaving itself into the fabric of my being. One night, I stood before the cracked mirror that hung crookedly on my wall. The glass was marred with fine fractures, distorting my reflection into something unrecognizable. As I stared, my image wavered, shifting and twisting until a dark shadow curled at the edge of my vision, like a serpent waiting to strike. My breath caught. The Carnival's legacy was not a chain I could shed so easily. It was a part of me, now an unseen bond that tightened with every passing day. I reached out to touch the mirror, fingers trembling as the cold glass met my skin. The reflection flickered, and for a moment I saw Mara's flickering eyes staring back. A whisper echoed in my mind, "The curse sleeps, but it never dies." Fear clawed at my throat, but beneath it a stubborn ember of resolve sparked to life. I would not let this darkness consume me. If the Carnival's curse lingered within, I would fight it, not just to save myself, but to end the legacy of terror once and for all. But as the nights grew longer and the shadows deeper, I realized the true battle was only beginning. The unseen chains that bound me were tightening, and the Carnival's return was not a question of if, but when. I was trapped in a legacy I never chose, haunted by a joy turned to terror, and the curse whispered my name in the dark. The Carnival had never truly closed, and neither could I. The shadows stirred again, and with them, the nightmare waited to reclaim me. Outside, the wind carried a faint melody, a twisted lullaby that promised both delight and doom. I clenched my fists, the fight raging inside me as the unseen chains threatened to pull me back into the abyss. But I would hold on. I had to. Because some curses could be broken, even if their scars never fully faded. And the Carnival's final act was yet to come.